As far as I'm concerned, I've been doing business for a long time that I could do just about any role in my businesses. I know 100% I could do any of the roles in my business, but there are people who can do them better. There's better salespeople, there's better operations people, there's better people at accounting. And so hiring people who are really good at what they do has been the best investment in time. And it's just like a relief to find somebody who loves that thing.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast. This is the podcast where you hear the real stories of people just like you who become extraordinary leaders. You will learn valuable lessons from their lives, lessons that you can apply to become the best leader you were created to be. When leaders are intentional, lives are changed. I'm your host, Sean Olson. I am an executive coach, business owner, podcast host, keynote speaker. Glad to have you here with us today. As we get rolling today, if you would help us out with the Intentional Leader Podcast by hitting that like button, subscribe button, leave comments, make all the algorithms happy, we would greatly appreciate that so we can get our message out to more and more people around the world. Well, welcome to this episode. Today, listeners, I'm excited to have Dave Burnett with me. Dave is the CEO of AOK Marketing and promotionalproducts.com. He comes to us from Toronto, Canada, from the Great White North, which isn't too white yet, thankfully, right, Dave? But Dave, it is great to have you on the Intentional Leader Podcast. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Sean. I really appreciate being here. And yeah, it's this time of year. It's a beautiful year, not too white, but give me 6 months and it's going to be the Great White North. That's for sure.
It is going to be for sure. Well, Dave, I know we've had a good chance to talk together and there's a lot we could get through today in talking and sharing. But you are an entrepreneur who has been there, done that. And I say that on both the good and the bad, right? Sometimes businesses work, sometimes they don't. But kind of walk us through your professional career so we can get to know you and just some of the leadership lessons learned along the way.
Absolutely. So my leadership started back when I was in university still. So I was in third year university, working a job, and thought to myself, I can do this better than they can. There's no reason why I shouldn't just step out on my own. So I did. We were actually doing point of purchase sampling at the time. So if you ever go into a Costco or a Kroger or whatever, and there's somebody there giving out free samples of food, I did that except with liquor. So we did that, and I'm sure, in university, people liked me for my personality, but I think it was mostly because I was giving out free beer. That was most of it. So that was my first job, my first entrepreneurial exercise. I had 50 employees working for me.
Wow.
While still in school full time. So that was my first real exposure to it.
So let me ask you about that. So you had 50 employees. So they're obviously doing the same thing, doing sampling. Yeah. How did you get into that? How did you acquire? Obviously, you must have had some partnerships with different liquor distributors, I'm guessing. How'd that play?
So I just did the old school cold calling back in the day. So I'm dating myself because this was back in the 90s before most of the technology we have today existed. But I actually just cold called in. So I actually had Bacardi and Labatt's big beer brand as clients for me when I was 20, 21. No, I would have been 21-ish. Yeah. So it was great, except, I have to date myself. Back in the old days when you used to have a phone that you could pick up at different parts of the house, right? And you would then be talking to the same person. I was still living at home in the summertime between my university career. And I was on the call with Bacardi, a client, and my mother picked up the phone, the other extension in another room, and was like, "David, are you on the phone?" And it was one of the most mortifying experiences that I've ever had on a client call. But yeah, so you go through all these things when you're trying to get things started.
Hey, it didn't hurt it, right? So
it didn't. It didn't. My client was very understanding. So
back in the days of landline, everybody knows what that is like. So
yeah, absolutely. So that was great. But yeah, that's how I got started. Cold calling, just picking up the phone. Eventually, a couple of people said yes, so we got going.
Awesome. So what was your journey after university?
So I sold that. So I ended up having a friend of mine's dad at the time help me get started. So he was my financial partner, and I sold my interest in that business to him at the end of university, and then went off and actually got recruited as an independent contractor into a promotional products business. So T-shirts, hats, pens, all that kind of good stuff. And so I was in that business doing sales for them when I actually started my second business. in partnership with the owners of that promotional products business. So that business is actually now called achievers.com. And so we founded that, got it going, got the first few clients, and that was really exciting too. But I left that business back in 2002, and it sold actually in 2015 for $110 million. So that's
Wow.
an exciting exit for them. But I'd already exited back in
Exactly.
2002, so yeah, it was really really interesting. So then in 2002, I started my promotional products company, and that went well. It went reasonably well, right up until the Great Recession, at which
Mm-hmm.
point I was losing $70,000 a month. So that
Wow.
was not really sustainable, to say the least. So that
So
means,
let's hit that for 1 second, though. So
yeah,
promotional products, obviously, everybody knows what that is, right? Different items that are out there, and they can buy those. Um, just kind of curious, the 70,000 a month with the downturn and losing that, was that because of stock you had? Was that because of the employees? I mean, what brought that about? Because people would be sitting back going, how can you lose that much a month?
first of all, I wouldn't recommend it. Just
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Second thing is, how did that happen? Well, what happened was the year that Lehman Brothers went out of business. I think it was
Mm-hmm.
'07. They went out of business in mid-September, and we were still getting lots of business. So the way budgeting cycles work in larger organizations, they spend the money they've got for the year. So I thought, oh my goodness, we are going to, run out of we're gonna run out of budget right now in September when this all happened. And I thought, you know what? It's okay. We're good. We still had lots of business September, October, November, December, but January 1st, everything went to zero.
Mm.
There was no budget for 2008. And as a result of there being no budget for 2008, we really got into all kinds of issues. One of which was we had overheads, people
Yeah.
primarily who were on the payroll, and due to no fault of their own, were not able to generate sales. We're not able to process orders because there just wasn't anything. And so that's really what happened. It was the people, it was the overheads associated with that. So the first part of that year, unfortunately, we had to significantly downsize
Mm-hmm.
to adjust to the new environment, the new reality, and that was honestly some of the
It is.
toughest conversations I've had to have as a leader,
Yeah.
is explaining to people that due to no fault of their own,
Mm-hmm.
they weren't going to have a job anymore, and so I felt
Yeah.
like a significant failure at the time. It was really,
So that's an interesting piece. I can't imagine that human side of that, right?
yeah.
Um, and even though I'm assuming these employees that had to be let go, they understood the cultural dynamics. It wasn't a Dave issue. It wasn't a promotional products issue. It
Yeah.
was a cultural issue. Even though they understand that, did it impact how they responded to it?
Oh, they were all great. I mean, one of the things that I always loved is the people I work with. I work with great people and have the entire time, which really made that much harder.
Yeah.
Just not being able to be able to look people in the eye who you really care about, who do great work, and being like, I'm sorry, I'm literally putting payroll on my credit card. I can't
Mm-hmm.
sustain this. Like there just isn't the ability to be able to do it. So it was tough, but they were very understanding. I mean, the writing was on the wall. If
Yeah.
there's no business, they're smart enough to know that there's no business, and it wasn't for them lack of trying either. It just was the market economy. I mean, the same thing happened in COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was meeting, nobody was getting together. There was nothing going on. You couldn't give a promotional products like a mug or a pen. You
Correct.
couldn't hand that from one person to the other because it was like it was contaminated. It possibly had COVID or cooties or like
Yeah.
whatever. It was like
Exactly.
it was radioactive. It might as well have been. So that was really, really a couple tough times we've had to come through.
No doubt. So you navigate through that. Then where'd you go next?
So when we realized that our traditional way of selling wasn't working, I realized we had to get transitioned to selling online.
Mm.
So what I did was I went out and I bought 3,000 URLs and
Wow.
put up 500 websites. And in doing that, I got good at SEO.
No
So
doubt.
as a result of that, people started saying, "Hey, we're finding you online. How are you doing this? Like, what's going on?" And as a result, we actually had our business kind of happen organically, where
Yeah.
it was too much demand for that service, actually, believe it or not, from our competitors, because our competitors called us up and were like, hey, my customers are finding you. How are you doing that? And can you do that for us? And so first 4 or 5, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that
Exactly.
for you. But then I realized I learned eventually. So then I learned that there was a business opportunity here. So I started up a digital agency called AOK Marketing, and that grew from there. So it pulled us out of the recession of having, zero revenue, zero income. And then I'm very fortunate to say that the promotional products business came back too.
Yeah.
And so I ended up with 2 businesses out of that situation.
That's
So
awesome.
it was
So a couple questions about all that. So you buy 3,000 URLs, set up 500 websites.
yep.
Those websites, I'm guessing, were all around the promotional product side. So it was all feeding to the same spot in the end.
Correct. It was all, well, they were actually individual sites, but they were all lead generations. So we would have like Seattle promotionalproducts.com and Vancouver promotionalproducts.com
Nice.
and that kind of stuff.
Nice.
So, yeah, so we ended up with all of that. And then actually, years later, I actually ended up with the domain promotionalproducts.com after having talked to a guy for 16 years. It took me 16 years to get the domain promotionalproducts.com from this
To
guy.
convince them to sell it to you.
Yes, literally. I talked to him in 2002, just shortly after I started the promotional products business, and he's like, "Oh, I'm keeping it for my son. And by the way, if you do want to buy it, it's this price," which was a ridiculous price.
Yeah.
And then I called him back 6 months later. His name is Charles. I'm like, "Hey, Charles, Dave calling again." He's like, "Nope, still not really interested, but
Yeah.
here's the price." And of course, the price was higher, and so the price kept
Exactly.
going up and up and up, and then it started going down and down and down. But I called him every 6 months. And finally, in 2018, he said to me, "Dave, my son doesn't want it, and you caught me on a good day. Here's my price. If you want it, it's yours." So as a result of that, I was very fortunate that I was in a bit of a better financial situation than I was in 2002. And I said, okay, done. Let's do it.
Nice.
So I bought it.
Nice. I love that, though, from a leadership perspective. So, listeners, I want you to hear some of the principles that are behind that. One of the phrases I use, Dave, all the time is that leadership is influence. Influence is behavior. Are you behaving like a leader? Right. So it kind of trickles out to the behavior side. And so when I hear that story, first of all, 16 years, one of the greatest attributes of leadership is persistence, staying the course, going after it. There's so much new that's out there. But leadership in the end is about the people. It's not about the product or the process or the URL, promotionalproducts.com. It's about the people. And so you are persistent in it. You are developing that relationship with him, whether he realized it or not. And when it came down to it at the end, after 16 years, that sounds like ridiculous, right? But I like your phrase on there, every 6 months. So I'm assuming that maybe like you had something on your calendar, like every 6 months you're going to tag him.
Yeah, absolutely. On my Outlook calendar, instead of like, it's somebody's anniversary or somebody's birthday, it was call Charles. So
Yeah.
I called Charles, and he's like, and he always answered the phone. Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
Like he knew I was calling. He knew why I was
Exactly.
calling. Some conversations were shorter than others, but some of them were. And then finally, he just said, "You've been following up with me for so long. I get questions from people all the time. Can I buy the URL?" And he said, "But you've been following up with me, so let's do it."
That's awesome. No, that's great leadership in that, though, trying to influence him over time to where, you know what, if he got to a point, had you not called him back at that moment, when he got to a point where he's like, I need to unload, you would have been the one he thought of. And that's
Oh,
what you want out of that.
yeah.
And I want our listeners to understand that in leadership and in business, it sometimes takes years for quality things to come about. I got an email last week out of the blue, got this email from this person who's wanting executive coaching from our company. And I was like, hey, how'd you hear about us? She goes, I heard you speak 2 years ago in Quebec City, Canada.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's awesome. And I kind of remember, kind of didn't remember, when you're speaking all over the country in North America, you don't remember everybody, but that was 2 years later. And one of our best clients, it was a 4-year nurturing relationship before we got to yes.
Yeah. You have to do those things. And I mean, there's one of the things that people don't appreciate all the time is everybody sees what's the best, a good analogy? It's like a marathon, right? Mm-hmm. They see at the beginning when you're starting off, and say you're a spectator of a marathon, you see people starting the run, right? And then you see them when they come across the finish line. right? They see at those 2 points, but they don't see the 26.2 miles in between when you're grinding away, doing what needs to be done every day. And they just celebrate the win or the loss, whatever it may
Yep.
be. But it's really the grind that makes all the difference. It's all that 26.2 miles. So
It is. It is. So, talk to us about AOK marketing for a moment. Obviously, SEO kind of fell in your lap because of that route that you took, and people were calling you saying, "How are you doing this?" But what is AOK doing? What's your head count? Where are you as the leader, the CEO of it? What's your role with the company now?
yeah, absolutely. So we got into this, as I said, basically by accident,
Hmm.
and as a result of that, we've evolved over the years. So other things that we've done, like Achievers.com, for example, just going back even
Yeah.
further in the promotional products business, was developed because of a client need. We had a specific client who needed a rewards and incentive program for their call center. And so they came to us and said, "Hey, this is kind of like because I was working with the client on promotional products, so they were thinking, should we give them pens, should we give them a T-shirt, whatever?" And I said to them, "Well, what are you actually trying to do?" And they said, "Well, we're actually trying to incent people in a certain way." So I came up with the idea that if we do an online points system, which is
Hmm.
common everywhere now, then this is something you could incent your people with. But it was the first time, like this was 2000, like this was in the .com boom when all this was happening. So it was really in response to client need. Same thing happened with the SEO side. And then with AOK marketing, as we were moving forward, we realized that SEO is one thing, but people also need paid search
Hmm.
because that's the next need that we were getting asked for. So we launched paid search. Then it became paid social as social
Hmm.
got higher and more and more prevalent. So paid social. And then we got into conversion rate optimization because people's websites weren't converting well enough. And then so it just evolved based on client need. And where we are today is on the AI side of things. So we're
Hmm.
really have evolved into SEO for AI as a primary thing. And how do you show up in large language models and what are the different things you need to do? Because I was actually a beta tester for
Yeah.
OpenAI back in 2018, 2019. So I've
Wow.
been watching the technology evolve. And that's the other thing as a leader. I mean, I started my first business before Google was invented.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you look at now, I own a digital agency that primarily works with Google. The only reason and the only way that that is possible is by keeping on top of what's happening and being willing to learn and adjust and change. As a leader, being able to see around the corner as to what's coming next is really a skill that you need to develop. What are the trends?
It
What are
is.
the whispers? What are the little sounds that you hear they're like, what? I think that whisper is going to turn into a conversation that's going to turn into people yelling and screaming for more.
Yeah.
That's the really important
So let's
thing.
sit on that concept for a minute because I think this is a big piece. That's one way you could call that vision, right? Looking ahead, what's coming next, trying to be prescient, knowing all that's happening around us and such. What did Dave do? So disregard the companies right now. What does Dave do to see the trends that are occurring, begin to look ahead, like maybe a transferable skill our listeners can tap into?
Absolutely. I mean, it really comes down to what I kind of think of as your Netflix time, right? We're
Okay.
we're all busy, right? We're absolutely all busy, packed meetings, school, family, whatever it may be. We're all busy, but we all have some of that discretionary time. So whatever you do with that discretionary time tends to determine, in my experience, for me, what it's done is it's really determined what my next steps are. So
Yep.
don't get me wrong, I still binge, Game of Thrones or something. I still do the
Yeah.
Netflix times, but what I do is I take that time and try to spend it on learning what's coming next. So for example, right now, because I'm heavily interested and involved in the AI side of things, I actually spend a bunch of time on X, Twitter, the platform.
Hmm.
It's a really interesting platform because it's got a noise problem. If you don't have
Hmm.
it set up, you don't have your feed set up correctly, it can be a real, like, why would you spend time there? So what I did was I deleted everybody I followed and I followed specific people on the AI side of things, like OpenAI and the leaders
Yep.
of OpenAI and different thought leaders, and actually took that and just made my feed everything related to AI. And because that's where all the tech people hang out, I mean, not all, but most,
Sure.
it really created this cutting edge Silicon Valley. megaphone for me that I'm like, okay, this is what's coming next. This is the cutting edge. This is what's happening. Because I'm at the other end of the country, right? I'm in Toronto on the East Coast. Silicon Valley is on the West Coast where all the innovation is happening. So what I do is, in the evening for an hour or two, Saturday mornings before people get up, I spend hours just figuring out what's going on, learning, growing, and training myself as to see what's happening. So that's how I do it. I allocate specific amounts of time in my day to actually learn about what's coming next.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to quickly interrupt this podcast to talk to you about something huge that is coming out in August from Renergize Professional Coaching. It is the Intentional Leader Network. We've talked about this coming. The Intentional Leader Network, you are going to get an online course on how to become the best leader you were created to be. You're going to have bi-weekly group coaching calls with everybody in the network where you'll be learning content, you'll be given tools, and we'll even have hot seat coaching. You will have the chance to bring your questions to the table, have me coach you in real time with the entire audience listening. And one of the greatest aspects of the Intentional Leader Network is developing a community of friends from all different sectors, all different levels of leadership, learning from one another and taking that learning to the next level. If you're ready to become the best leader you were created to be, look for the Intentional Leader Network at intentionalleadernetwork.com. Join the wait list today. It launches in August. We're looking forward to having you in the network. Thanks. I like that. And what I like about it is it is transferable. So listeners, you may not be in the tech space. You may be in a retail space. You may be in food service. You may be in consulting space. For Dave, it was through X, right? It could be through X. It could be through Instagram. It could be through YouTube, whatever platform it is. But I like the key thought behind there is zero in on the people that are thinking ahead. Zero in on those thought leaders to try to be the first one out there. And, it's kind of funny as I'm listening to you, there's the old adage of business is sometimes it's not about being the best. Sometimes it's about being first. Yeah. That's what you're talking about, right? Is listening to those people that are way out in front. We don't need to be with them, but if we can drag on their heels and be first to market to most of our competitors, we win.
Well, and for me, there's the ability to be first in something that's proven somewhere else. So, for example, if somebody is having great success in a different industry, doing a particular thing, being able to transfer that knowledge and say, hey, that thing that they're doing, plus what I know about my industry, you combine those together and you create something completely unique. And that can be a real competitive advantage for you. So that's how, what we did for our tool. So we got a new tool out called Llmtel. It's Llmtel. And so what we did was I was listening to see, okay, what is everybody talking about? I'm on the SEO side of things. I'm trying to help people gain visibility. So what is everybody talking about? We're talking about AI. Okay, I get it. Now all of a sudden there's AI search. Okay, so what does AI search mean? And I realized, search is getting more fragmented, right? For the last 20, 25 years, we've been quite spoiled, honestly. You go to Google and you get the answer, right? It's one of those blue links. Or you go to Bing if you're one of the 16% of people who do that.
Sure.
So what I realized was, okay, but now lots of people are going to ChatGPT because ChatGPT can now search. Claude can now search. Perplexity is a new thing. So all these different tools. And I thought, but there's no tool out there that tells me, like in the SEO world, there's a bunch of tools out there that tell you how you're ranking for keywords. That's big in the SEO world. But there's nobody telling me how I show up in prompts, generated prompt results. So I was like, there's got to be something out there. And there wasn't. So we built a tool that now actually goes out and checks how you show up and how you rank in the large language models for your key. People think of keywords. People think about search phrases. It's a little bit different because they're prompts as opposed to keywords, but it's very similar thinking. So taking something that already existed and applying AI to it, and we end up with a new tool. So that's
So Llmtel is pretty awesome. Thank you, Dave. About a month ago or so, you ran my company, Renergize Professional Coaching, through that. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. We'll just use my company as the example on it. So help our listeners understand how many of those large language models, so you have ChatGPT, Perplexity, what it was or what is the count of those AI language models on your platform for the assessment?
So right now we've got 17. So we track the
Mm-hmm.
17 largest. So that's ChatGPT, Claude, which is also Anthropic, Gemini, which is Google, DeepSeek, and all the different variations of ChatGPT. The one you can have at home. So the interesting thing is there's lots and lots of models out there because there's Facebook came out with Llama, which is open source.
Mm-hmm.
There's another tool called Hugging Face that has lots of open source, and then there's also OpenAI came out with their own open source. So there's lots of open source models as well. So the 17 that we've got are kind of the largest, the most
Mm-hmm.
well known, and the most used. But there's a lot of them out there. So we try and get
Yeah.
into.
And so, what was interesting, I love the report that you have on there. So, what they do is they run a report of your business and it kind of shows where you rank on all those, if they even know you exist, things like that. And I was floored because, we have a Chat GPT account for our company. So, Chat GPT knew us. That was number one for us. Um, the other ones really didn't even know we existed, and one of the ones that knew we existed had incorrect information as far as like where we were headquartered and things like that. And so, I'm looking at that and I'm like, we've been around, going at this full time for 9 years. We're doing all the social. We've been growing rapidly. I realize we're a small boutique firm in the end, but we are an unknown in the AI world, in
Yeah.
this AI search world and stuff. And so the assessment was incredible to see where we stand. So my question to you, Dave, is okay, now that I know where we stand, if companies were to take that assessment, what do we then do to rectify that situation?
So traditional SEO is all about page authority. I want to get this page to rank for my search term. So just using Starbucks as an example. If you
Mm-hmm.
just go to Google and you type in Starbucks, you're going to see starbucks.com and a bunch of information about the company. Now, if you have ever paid attention, on the right hand side, there's also a bunch of additional information, like who the founder is, and then also the information about they're a public company and information about who their potential competitors are. That's called a knowledge panel. So I'll come back to the knowledge
Mm-hmm.
panel in a second, but just back to Starbucks. So you type in Starbucks, you get information about the company. If you type in Starbucks near me, then you get information about the local Starbucks near you. 3 or 4 listings plus a map, right? And then if you type in Starbucks Frappuccino, it will actually show you the Frappuccino page. So traditional SEO is all about getting that Frappuccino page to rank if somebody's looking for a Frappuccino. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever that looks like in your business, do you have a relevant page that Google can serve up that will give you the answer to that particular search query? That's what SEO traditionally was all about.
Right.
Now, AI is a little bit different. AI isn't about page authority, it's about your entire entity's authority. So, what there is information out there on the internet. Wikipedia, for example, using the Starbucks example, they would have a Wikipedia page. Reddit, enough people go onto Reddit and talk about how great their latte is. They got the pumpkin
Mm-hmm.
spice latte out, or whatever the latest thing is. So there's discussions about that. There's reviews. There's different locations. There's general overall entity authority. So that's the important thing. That's the differentiator. You're talking about entity authority as opposed to page authority.
Well stated.
So you have to make your entity more valuable to the LLMs to be noticed by the LLMs and chatbots and all those different
Yeah.
things in order to show up in the search results. So that's the important thing.
Fantastic. So you have this assessment now. That's my phrase for it. I don't know if that's the word you use.
It
That
works.
kind of shows where we stand. So is that being done through AOK Marketing? And then do you have a back end to it of then helping companies become entity known on those channels?
Yeah, so Llmtel is a standalone tool.
Okay.
Anybody can use it, but AOK Marketing, as one of the services that we do, we help people show up for SEO, SEO, traditional SEO, but also people call it geo, people call it AEO. There's all kinds of different
Yeah.
things. But SEO for AI models, we do that as well. So it's one of the fun things that we get to do is help people show up more.
Fantastic. So you're on the cutting edge with this. I know you do things to stay on the cutting edge, but let's talk about your team for a minute.
Yeah.
So disregard promotional products as far as like the retail items and then what AOK does. Talk about your teams and what you've done to develop teams, especially even though both are technology based, they're really not in the same realm. right? One's a retail, one's totally tech. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I think of the general types of businesses in kind of three buckets, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got services business, you've
Yep.
got products business, and you've got manufacturing businesses. Tech is another variation within, but those are kind of the three things that I think of. So I own two of those.
Mm-hmm.
I don't own a
Yep.
manufacturing business. So they're very different. But the interesting thing about that is the team and the structure associated with the businesses are fundamentally the same.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a business is three main categories. You've got acquisition, so that's sales and marketing. You've got delivery, so that's delivery of your products or your delivery of your services. And then you've got the admin side. So that's
Yep.
HR, accounting, finance, whatever it may be. So those are kind of the three main buckets. So my businesses are set up that way. You've got acquisition, delivery, and the back end. And so as a result of that, it's very easy to run both businesses. We've got overlapping team members between a couple of businesses on the admin side. So like accounting is centralized and those kinds of things. But with that business setup, we have the ability to be able to be flexible and have different people working on different projects, but everybody understands those buckets, and it eliminates. So one of the things being a marketer in general that I see is challenges between sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Sales people are like the leads suck.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing people are like the salespeople can't close. There tends to
Exactly.
be
Yeah.
some challenges there. But if you have it all as one department, you are the acquisition department. The marketers work with the salespeople
Mm-hmm.
to get better leads, to close different things, and it all depends on the metrics that you're measuring. So for me, I'm a analytical marketer, which is kind of a
Mm-hmm.
contradiction in terms. Most people are creatives who are marketers, but
Correct.
I'm really about the numbers. So for me, it comes down to we have specific tracking metrics associated with, okay, how many outreaches were made? How many of those resulted in successful appointments? How many of those resulted in people showing for the appointments? How many of those shows had presentations? How many of those presentations resulted in orders? And then that's kind of the first front end. But then the next logical step is, okay, once they've got an order in, how are they onboarded? What's the time to onboarding? Once they're onboarded, what is their time to activation? So onboarding is bringing them on as a client. Activation is they got their first positive result, as an example. So what's the time between onboarding and activation?
Mm-hmm.
Once they're activated, what's the retention? How long do they stay with us? And then if you can take a look at the retention, what is your churn rate? So
Yeah.
we've got metrics the whole way through the system, but it's all one system, but with the three parts of the organizations helping towards making those metrics matter. So I've always found with a team member, figuring out how they measure, what
Mm-hmm.
metrics they use, usually indicates how good they're going to be. Because if they're measuring little things, they know how to pull a lever here, they know how to pull a lever there.
Yep.
I need to up my show rates instead of I need to get better. Because people look at the bottom of the funnel. What's my conversion rate, right?
Right.
Like we sent out 1,000 emails, we got one sale, right? But they don't take a look at if we just got more people to show up to the appointments, if we doubled our show rate, we would double our close rate, right? They
Right.
always try to tweak the last number, but there might be something farther up the customer life cycle that they could work on. So, very long answer, but
Yeah, but I'm hearing different things in there that I like. So one aspect of this, which I think is really important, is you have all the analytical pieces, right? All the data pieces to track. And what that's doing then is it's setting your people up for success where they know where they stand and they can see
yeah.
what's taking place. And so when there's clear expectations and clear data, you as a leader are setting your people up for success.
Well, and we use the Who process. Are you familiar with the book Who by Randy Street?
I am not. Go ahead and dive into that real quick.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. So very good hiring process, evaluation process, and what it does is it actually sets you up with a scorecard. So we have scorecards for everybody in our business, and the scorecard basically has the expectations, the metrics, and the outcomes. And so we use that as a framework, but we also overlap with the EOS system.
Mm-hmm.
So we have different metrics associated with how good a fit people are with our core values. And so we have, we have our core values for our businesses. And then we also have our GWC, the get it, want it, and capable. So between those things, that kind of gives us a culture fit. Do they have our core values? Do they get the role? Do they want the role? Are they capable of executing on the role? That's the GWC. And then we've got specific roles with their own metrics. If somebody's close or if somebody is delivery, like one of our metrics, for example, is the time from inquiry to response. A metric is we get back to everybody under 5 minutes from any inquiry to response. We're trying to go to 1 minute. We're not quite there.
Yeah.
Team looks at me and they're like, Dave, 1 minute. Dave, 1 minute. I'm like, we're going to get there, right? We're under 5, but we're trying to get to 1. And we've seen our close rates skyrocket as a result, because it's like, okay, if you put an inquiry in and somebody gets right back to you, hey, thanks so much.
Yep.
It's really going to be interesting. So
that's awesome. No, that's incredible data. And I appreciate you sharing that book. The second thing that I heard from you, and I want to tap into this for a second, and it goes to who you hiring the right people. You have data, you have the analytics, so you have clarity, you have expectations, they have their own scoreboards and their markers. But what I also heard you say was they will go figure out this, they will go figure out that. And what I like about how you were describing that is you hired people who have passion and desire, but they're inquisitive and they're trying to figure it out, and you're giving them the freedom to do it. So from the leadership side, from you, it's giving them that freedom, but it's also on the hiring side, hiring people that actually are trying to figure it out for themselves, not waiting for you to tell them, but trying to find a solution.
I am so grateful every time we hire somebody and they just take something and run with it. They take something and make your life easier. As far as I'm concerned, I've been doing business for a long time that I could do just about any role in my businesses. I know 100% I could do any of the roles in my business. But there are people who can do them better. There's better salespeople. There's better operations people. There's better people at accounting. And so hiring people who are really good at what they do has been the best investment in time. And it's just like a relief to find somebody who loves that thing that you have to do, and you're grinding away at it and you're just doing it because you know it has to be done. And then letting them do it. I love when people come to me like, hey, Dave, I just saw this thing. Hey, we just invented this process. Hey, we just eliminated this process because it wasn't needed. Like all of those things. It's finding people who are really good at what they do, and they're unfortunately not as common as one would want to.
Yeah, but they're out there. It's funny. I had a conversation with my team last week, and one of the things I love about our team is they're always coming with ideas. And so we talked to them. We said, we want you to be intrapreneurs. Okay. So what is an entrepreneur? It's the same as an entrepreneur, but they're doing it inside of this business. Right. And so we are an executive coaching and leadership development firm, but there's so many different angles to that. There's so many different perspectives to that and opportunities. And so we're challenging them. We're encouraging them, be entrepreneurs, come back to the table with ideas. And when you come with a great idea, we're going to give you some free rein to go pursue it and see what can happen there. When we do that, that's where we really find that realm of innovation that goes way beyond us as an individual.
Absolutely. And I find one of the things that really works well for us is providing as much clarity as a leader for how the individual's role impacts the bottom line. What are they doing, and how does it fit into the business that helps everyone achieve their goal? And that is really something that I've found helpful. That even, like the frontline person or the person who's putting together that email, right? Whatever.
Right.
It's just, how does that impact the bottom line? And then the fact that if they don't do their part, everything else the whole way down kind of suffers a little bit. And then if you have everybody not doing their part, the whole organization suffers a lot. So being able to have that insight, and I found for people, if they know that what they're doing matters, like they're not just writing that email, they're putting that email together because it's going to drive sales, and that's going to help Steve get his thing and hit his goals, and that's going to help the whole team. And it really becomes a much better environment for everybody.
It does. People want to have purpose. People want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And what I like in your description is it's that linkage, right? Here's this little piece you're doing, but it links here, it links here. And without you doing your piece, it all falls apart.
Yeah.
So you have incredible value no matter what that piece is.
And on the marketing side of things, it's like if people don't know who you are, if people don't know you exist, then they're not going to be able to buy from you, right? So this is, as you can tell, I tend to focus a lot of my time on the acquisition side of things.
Absolutely.
So as a result of that, it's like you need to advertise. But then the question is, what is advertising? It's like, well, it's anything that helps you become known, right? It could be giving that pen to that person. It could be writing that social post. It could be doing some paid media. It could be that Google ad. It could be that whatever. Those are all part of the same thing. So trying to understand how that one little part of that one giant thing impacts, sometimes you just need some clarity on that. And that's what we try to do.
Absolutely. Great conversation. So listeners, I encourage you to reach out to Dave. In the show notes for this episode, you'll see the links to AOK Marketing, promotional products, and Llmtel. Is that its own beast now as far as a website?
It is. It's llmtel.com. So it's its own thing. So,
and we'll have that link in there, and encourage you to follow up with Dave. Well, Dave, I want to finish the way we finish every show. We ask our guest to give our listeners a quick tip. So what is something our listeners can intentionally do today to be a more effective leader?
So I think the most important thing is to take care of themselves. I think the leaders today need to get their head on straight before they start leading. They need to lead themselves. So, I do this with a morning routine. Whatever works for anybody, you just got to get your head on straight before you go into that meeting. You just, I know the world is full of back to back meetings, but just taking a moment, stopping, and even booking time in a calendar to just be like, I need to think strategically today between 10 and 11. And that's what I'm going to do. You just, you keep that appointment with yourself. So that's what I would say.
Great tip. Self-leadership sets you up for success. Well, Dave, it's been great to have you. Good luck as things keep moving forward with all three businesses now, including Llmtel. And I look forward to following up to see how we can improve the rankings for Energized Professional Coaching, get us out there a little bit higher on those things. So thanks for joining us, and good luck and God bless in your work.
Thank you. And I appreciate you having me. So good luck to everybody out there as well.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast presented by Energized Professional Coaching. Be sure to see the show notes for links to Energized Professional Coaching and links to contact our guests. Now, hit that subscribe button so that you are alerted with every new episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast.